It all started with a divorce. At first, everything seemed like it would go smoothly. But as soon as the father and mother split up, things took a turn for the worse. The mother, who was determined to have full control, started making things difficult for the father. She didn't want him to have any say in their daughter's life. She was angry, and instead of focusing on what was best for their child, she focused on winning the battle. The father, let's call him John, loved his daughter more than anything. He wanted to stay involved in her life and make sure she grew up happy. But no matter what he did, it felt like his ex-wife, Sarah, was standing in his way. Sarah started making up stories, trying to paint John as an unfit parent. She said he was irresponsible, that he couldn't be trusted to care for their daughter, and she even claimed that he had a temper. The accusations were hurtful, and John didn't know how to prove them wrong. In court, it felt like Sarah was getting everything she wanted. She spoke about how John had made mistakes in the past, how he wasn't good enough, and how their daughter would be better off with just her. She tried to make him look bad in front of everyone. John sat there, feeling powerless. All he wanted was to see his daughter grow up, to be there for her in every way he could. But Sarah made it seem like he was the problem. Their daughter, Emily, was in the middle of it all. She was only 10 years old, but she could feel the tension between her parents. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she knew things weren't right. Emily loved her father deeply. Even though Sarah tried to turn her against him, Emily could see that John was a good dad. But Sarah's influence was strong. Emily was often told that she should choose sides, but all she wanted was for things to go back to normal. John tried his best to remain calm, even as Sarah made everything more difficult. He would send messages to Emily, letting her know he was there for her, but the communication became more limited. Every time he tried to visit or talk to his daughter, Sarah made it harder. She would cancel plans, make excuses, or even pretend that Emily wasn't available. John's heart broke with each passing day. The court battle dragged on, and the emotional toll on both parents was visible. John wanted to show the court that he was a loving, responsible father, but Sarah's claims kept him from getting closer to Emily. She was winning, and it seemed like there was no way out. But John wasn't ready to give up. He knew he had to keep fighting for his daughter, no matter how tough it got. Then something unexpected happened. The court case was nearing its final stages, and it seemed like Sarah was about to win. But John didn't know that his daughter, Emily, had been paying close attention. What she did next would change everything. As the court battle continued, Sarah became more and more determined to take full control of Emily's life. She wasn't just trying to win a custody battle. She was trying to erase John from their daughter's world. Sarah knew exactly how to manipulate the situation to her advantage. She told Emily things that weren't true, saying her dad didn't care about her and that he was unfit to be her parent. Emily, confused and hurt, started to wonder if what her mom was saying was true. Sarah's words weren't just emotional, they were calculated. She knew how to play on Emily's fears, telling her that things would be better if she just agreed to live with her. She promised Emily that if she stayed with her, life would be easier. But deep down, Emily could sense the lies. She could feel the tension every time she spoke to her dad, and although she was being pushed to choose, Emily's love for him never truly wavered. John, on the other hand, was doing everything he could to fight for his rights. He knew Sarah's manipulation tactics, but proving it in court was a different story. Sarah was good at what she did, and every time John tried to explain how things really were, Sarah would come up with another story or make another accusation. John tried his best to stay calm, but it was becoming harder. His love for his daughter pushed him to keep fighting, no matter how tough the situation got. Emily's confusion was growing. She didn't want to hurt her father, but at the same time, she felt like her mom was the only one who understood her. Sarah kept reminding Emily that her father wasn't there when things went wrong, and made it seem like he didn't care about her. It was painful to hear these things, but Emily couldn't help but wonder if there was some truth to it. One day, during a visit with her dad, Emily asked him a question that broke his heart. "Dad, why do you keep fighting for me? Mom says you don't really want to see me." John was devastated. He took a deep breath and tried to explain. "Emily, I love you more than anything. I've always been here for you. I'm fighting because I believe we should be together, no matter what your mom says. She's wrong about me, but I will always fight for you." Emily didn't know what to say. She wanted to believe her dad, but she was caught in the middle. Sarah's words echoed in her head, but something about her dad's sincerity made her want to trust him. She knew he had never lied to her before. Meanwhile, Sarah continued her efforts to separate them. She told John he couldn't visit, didn't allow him to call Emily, and made excuses to keep them apart. The harder Sarah pushed, the more Emily noticed how much her dad truly cared. But despite the growing doubt in her heart, Emily felt trapped. She didn't know how to stand up for her dad without hurting her mom, and that torn feeling weighed heavily on her. The court hearing was fast approaching, and everything seemed to be going in Sarah's favor. John feared he would lose the fight for his daughter, but little did he know, Emily was about to make a decision that would shock everyone. As the day of the final court hearing approached, John felt like everything he had worked for was slipping away. Every time he tried to prove that he was a good father, Sarah would twist his words or create new accusations. The battle had taken a toll on him, but he was determined to keep fighting. He knew that if he gave up now, he might lose his chance to be with Emily. Meanwhile, Emily was facing her own inner battle. She loved her dad with all her heart, but Sarah's words had planted seeds of doubt. She kept hearing her mother tell her that her dad was a bad person, that he didn't care, and that it would be better for her to stay with Sarah. Emily didn't want to believe that, but the pressure was building. She couldn't understand why her mom was saying these things, but she couldn't ignore them either. One afternoon, before the final court date, Emily made a decision. She wasn't going to stay silent anymore. She had been quiet for so long, trying to please both parents, but it was time to speak up. Emily knew that she needed to tell the truth, even if it meant standing against her mom. She felt that if she didn't act now, things might get even worse. Emily called her dad and asked if he could meet her at the courthouse the next day. John was surprised, but he agreed without hesitation. When he arrived, he saw Emily waiting outside the courtroom, looking more confident than he had ever seen her. His heart swelled with hope, but there was also a feeling of nervousness in his chest. He didn't know what Emily was about to do, but he could sense that something important was coming. "Dad," Emily said quietly, her voice steady but filled with emotion, "I need to show you something. It's important." She handed him a small envelope, and when he opened it, he saw a stack of papers. At first, he was confused, but as he looked closer, he realized what it was: letters, pictures, and notes. It was everything Emily had been secretly keeping over the past few months. There were drawings of their happy memories together, notes that Emily had written to remind herself that her dad loved her, and even a list of reasons why she thought he was a good father. There were also letters Emily had written to her mom, trying to explain how she felt caught in the middle, but never being able to get her mom to listen. "I've been writing these for a while," Emily said. "I wanted to remember the good times with you, Dad. And now, I want to show the court that you're not the person Mom says you are." John was speechless, holding back tears. He had always known how much Emily loved him, but seeing her take this brave step filled him with pride. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment when Emily would take control of her own story. With newfound strength, Emily told her dad that she was going to show these letters and drawings to the court. "I'm not going to let Mom control everything anymore. I want them to know the truth." John hugged his daughter, overwhelmed by her courage. "I'm so proud of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Emily knew that what she was about to do might upset her mom, but she couldn't stay quiet anymore. She was ready to take a stand and make sure that the truth was heard in the courtroom. The day of the final court hearing had arrived. John was nervous but hopeful. He had never imagined that his daughter would take such a brave step. But now, holding her letters and drawings, He felt more confident than ever. Emily had decided that it was time for the truth to be heard. She was ready to show the court what her father had truly meant to her. The courtroom was filled with tension as the judge, lawyers, and both parents sat waiting. Sarah, John's ex-wife, sat with a smug look on her face, certain that her manipulation would win the case. She had spent months convincing everyone that John was not a fit parent. She had painted a picture of him that made him seem distant and uncaring, and for a while, it seemed like her strategy was working. But today was different. Emily, standing beside her dad, looked determined. She had her heart set on telling the court the truth, no matter what her mother might say. As the hearing began, Sarah tried to speak first, presenting her case and accusing John of being unworthy of custody. But Emily wasn't going to let this go on any longer. When the judge asked if anyone else had something to say, Emily stood up without hesitation. The room fell silent, all eyes on the young girl. John's heart raced as he watched his daughter step forward. He had no idea what was going to happen next, but he knew this was her moment. "I want to show everyone who my dad really is," Emily said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. She walked to the front of the room, holding the envelope filled with her letters, drawings, and memories. She handed them to the judge, who looked at them carefully. "These are from me," Emily continued. "I've been keeping these because I want to remember the good times with my dad. He's always been there for me. He's not the person my mom says he is. He's not perfect, but he loves me, and he's tried his best." The courtroom was still. No one expected a young girl to stand up so bravely and speak her truth. Emily's words echoed through the room, and even Sarah's expression began to change. She hadn't expected her daughter to turn against her. And now, it was clear that Emily's feelings for her father were stronger than any lie Sarah had told. John watched, feeling a mix of pride and awe. He knew Emily had been struggling with the pressure of the custody battle, but now she was standing tall, speaking out for what was right. She wasn't afraid anymore. Emily went on, sharing the memories she had written about, the vacations they had taken together, the quiet evenings at home, and the simple moments when her dad had made her feel loved and safe. She explained how her mom had tried to make her choose sides, but deep down, she knew who her dad was. The judge, moved by Emily's bravery, asked her to explain more about why she had kept the letters and drawings. Emily told the court that she had always believed her dad loved her, and that's why she wanted to remember those good moments. She had kept them close, even when things were hard, because they were a reminder of the bond they shared. As Emily finished speaking, there was a long pause. The judge looked at the papers she had handed over, and then at the mother, who seemed unsure of what to say. The truth had been laid out before them, and now there was no turning back. The silence in the courtroom was almost unbearable. Emily's brave speech had left everyone in the room stunned. Even Sarah, who had been so sure of her victory, was momentarily speechless. She had expected Emily to back her up, to agree with everything she had said about John. But now her daughter had taken a stand, and Sarah didn't know how to respond. Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her face turned red with anger, and for a moment she looked like she might cry. But she quickly regained her composure. This wasn't the time for weakness. She was determined to keep control, to win this battle no matter what. "Your Honor," Sarah finally said, her voice cold and sharp, "don't be fooled by this." She pointed toward Emily. "This is just an emotional outburst from a child who doesn't fully understand the situation. John has never been the father he claims to be. He hasn't been there when Emily needed him. I am the one who has always taken care of her. I am the one who has protected her from him." The words felt like a slap to Emily's face. She couldn't believe her mom was saying these things after everything she had just shared. Emily had always known that her mom didn't like John, but hearing her say these things in front of the court was painful. But Emily wasn't going to back down now. She had shown the world the truth, and she wasn't going to let her mom's lies take that away from her. John, watching from the side, felt a surge of anger rise inside him. He had never been perfect, but he had always tried his best for Emily. He had never abandoned her, never ignored her, no matter what Sarah had said. He knew this wasn't just about custody anymore. This was about something deeper, the love between a father and his daughter. The judge, seeing the tension rising, asked Sarah to calm down. "Let's stick to the facts here," he said. "We are here to determine what is best for Emily, not to argue over past grievances." But Sarah wasn't finished. She wasn't going to let her daughter's testimony go unchallenged. "Emily is too young to understand the full picture," she said. "She doesn't know how much trouble John has caused in the past. He's unreliable, and I've had to pick up the pieces every time." Emily felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she blinked them away. She knew that she had to stay strong. She had spoken the truth, and now it was time for the world to see who her mom really was. Sarah's words were nothing but an attempt to cover up the hurtful things she had done over the years. Emily had lived through it, and now she wasn't afraid to speak out. "Your Honor," Emily said, this time with a steadier voice, "I know my dad loves me. I know he's been there for me in ways my mom never understood. Please don't let her decide for me anymore. I want to be with him." The words felt like a weight lifted off Emily's shoulders. She had said what she needed to say, and now it was out in the open for everyone to hear. Sarah sat back in her chair, glaring at her daughter. She knew she couldn't control the situation anymore. The truth was out, and Emily had taken the power back. The courtroom was quiet again. Everyone knew that something had changed. The judge, who had been observing the exchange carefully, was taking all of this in. The case had taken an unexpected turn, and it was clear that Emily's words had made a huge impact. The atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted. What started as a typical custody battle had turned into a dramatic and emotional showdown between mother and daughter. Emily's testimony had left a deep impression on everyone, including the judge. But now, the question was, what would happen next? After Emily's brave words, the judge decided that the court needed more time to review everything. There were too many emotions involved, and it was clear that the situation was far from straightforward. The judge called for a brief recess so everyone could regroup and consider the evidence. As the room cleared, John found a quiet spot to sit with Emily. He put a comforting arm around her. She was still a little shaky, but there was a sense of relief in her eyes. She had finally spoken her truth, and there was no turning back now. "You did great," John said, his voice full of pride. "I'm so proud of you." Emily gave him a small smile, but her mind was still racing. "What do you think will happen, Dad?" she asked softly. "I don't know," John admitted, his voice full of uncertainty. "But what I do know is that we've done everything we can, and you've been so brave today." Meanwhile, outside the courtroom, the lawyers for both sides were busy gathering information. Sarah's lawyer, clearly frustrated, was trying to figure out how to respond to Emily's powerful testimony. He knew that the case had changed direction, but he wasn't ready to give up. Sarah, who had been unusually quiet after the emotional confrontation, was now pacing nervously. She had tried to control everything, to make sure that John was painted as the bad guy. But Emily's words had ruined that plan. Sarah was furious, and she wasn't sure how to regain control. John's lawyer, on the other hand, was hopeful. He had seen the shift in the courtroom and knew that Emily's courage had made a difference. "This is big," he said to John. "Emily's testimony has changed everything. The judge will likely look into this more deeply." The judge called everyone back into the courtroom. The air was thick with tension as they all returned to their seats. The judge, a calm and thoughtful man, took his place and looked over the paperwork before him. He had listened carefully to everything that had been said, and now it was time to make some decisions. "I've heard a lot today," the judge began, "and it's clear that we have more to consider than just the usual arguments. This is a difficult case, but I believe the truth is in what we've heard from Emily. It's important that we look into her claims further." The judge then announced that the court would conduct a thorough investigation into the situation. This would include reviewing all the evidence, Emily's letters, the testimonies from both sides, and any other information that could shed light on what was truly best for Emily. Sarah's lawyer didn't seem pleased with this decision, but the judge was firm. "We cannot make a decision without fully understanding the situation," he said. "It's in Emily's best interest that we proceed carefully." John and Emily exchanged a glance, both nervous but relieved. The investigation would take time, but it meant that the truth would be explored, and Emily's voice would continue to be heard. The days following the judge's decision to conduct an investigation were filled with uncertainty. The court had promised to thoroughly review the evidence, but John and Emily knew it would take time. While they waited, they tried to find moments of peace in their daily lives, but the shadow of the custody battle still hung over them. Emily couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened in the courtroom. She had never imagined that her words would have such an impact. It felt like a weight had been lifted, but she also knew that the fight wasn't over yet. Her mom, Sarah, wasn't going to give up easily. Emily could still see the anger and disbelief in her mother's eyes as she sat silently after the court had adjourned. John was doing his best to stay hopeful. He spent hours with Emily, talking to her about how proud he was of her. They had never been closer. "You've shown so much courage, Em," he said, his voice full of admiration. "I'm so proud of the way you stood up for yourself and for me. No matter what happens next, you've already won in so many ways." Emily smiled, but there was a part of her that was still scared. What if the judge didn't believe her? What if her mom somehow twisted the truth again? But deep down, she knew that she had done the right thing. She had spoken from her heart, and that was the most important thing. Meanwhile, the investigation was moving forward. The judge ordered that interviews be conducted with both parents, as well as other people who could offer insight into the family's history. The goal was to get a clearer picture of what had been happening behind closed doors. Sarah's past behavior began to come under scrutiny. As the investigation continued, it was revealed that she had a pattern of making false claims about John. Witnesses came forward who had seen how Sarah had isolated Emily from her father over the years. There were reports from teachers and family friends who described how Sarah had manipulated Emily, filling her head with accusations that weren't true. One of the most surprising discoveries came when Sarah's own family members spoke out. They shared how they had witnessed Sarah's controlling behavior and how she had always tried to keep Emily from having a relationship with John. They even spoke about times when Sarah had belittled John, telling Emily things that were hurtful and untrue. For the first time, John felt like the truth was finally being heard. The investigation was revealing things he had known all along but could never prove. It was clear that Sarah's attempts to turn Emily against him were not only wrong but harmful. Emily didn't know about all the details of the investigation, but she did know that things were starting to shift. When she and John went to the court for the next hearing, there was a sense of hope in the air. It felt like the tide was turning. As the judge addressed the court, he began by summarizing the findings of the investigation. After reviewing all the evidence, the judge said, "It is clear that both parents have played significant roles in Emily's life. However, there is also overwhelming evidence that the mother's actions have caused harm, not just to Emily's relationship with her father, but also to Emily's emotional well-being." Emily held her breath as the judge spoke. She could feel her father's hand gently squeezing hers, giving her strength. This was it. This was the moment when everything could change. After weeks of tension, the day of the final ruling had arrived. The courtroom was filled with nervous energy. John and Emily sat side by side, holding hands. Both of them knew that today's decision would change their lives forever. Emily had already shown incredible strength by speaking out, but now they were waiting for the judge's final decision. The judge walked into the room, and everyone stood in respect. He looked over the paperwork one last time, carefully considering everything that had been said and shown in the investigation. After a long moment, he finally addressed the room. "I have reviewed all the evidence," the judge said, his voice steady and serious. I have heard the testimony of both parents, the evidence from the investigation, and most importantly, I have listened to Emily." John's heart raced. He could feel the weight of the moment. He squeezed Emily's hand tighter, trying to stay calm, but his nerves were on edge. He had fought so hard for this moment. He didn't want to lose her. "The court has found that while both parents have been involved in Emily's life," the judge continued, "there have been serious concerns regarding the mother's actions. The evidence presented shows that Sarah's behavior has caused harm to Emily's relationship with her father, and her emotional well-being has been affected." Sarah, sitting across from John and Emily, shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Her expression had changed. She no longer seemed as confident as she had in earlier hearings. It was clear that the weight of the investigation had taken its toll on her. She had fought to keep control, but now the truth was coming to light. John could hardly believe what he was hearing. The judge was recognizing everything he had fought for: the love and care he had always shown Emily, and the harm that Sarah had caused by keeping them apart. The fight wasn't over yet, but it felt like a huge weight was lifting from his shoulders. Based on the findings, the judge said, the court has decided that John will have primary custody of Emily. Sarah will have supervised visitation, and further counseling will be required. A quiet gasp filled the room, and Sarah's face turned pale. She looked like she had been punched in the stomach. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. This wasn't the outcome she had expected. She had done everything in her power to win, but now it was over. Emily, sitting beside her father, let out a soft sigh of relief. She had been holding her breath since the judge started speaking. Now, tears welled up in her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of happiness and relief. She knew this was the right decision. She had fought for it, and now her dad would be there for her every step of the way. John looked at Emily, his heart overflowing with love and gratitude. He leaned over and whispered, "We did it, Em. You were so brave." Emily smiled through her tears and nodded. "I knew you'd always be there for me, Dad." The courtroom was still. The judge gave his final remarks, telling Sarah that she needed to respect the ruling and focus on her own healing. The decision had been made, and there was no turning back. As they left the courtroom, John wrapped his arm around Emily's shoulders. "This is just the beginning of a new chapter for us," he said, smiling. Together, the days after the court ruling were filled with a sense of relief and joy for John and Emily. The battle had been long and difficult, but it had all led to this moment. Emily was finally going to be able to live with her dad full-time, and they could begin to heal from all the hurt caused by the custody battle. John and Emily spent the next few weeks adjusting to their new life together. They had always shared a strong bond, but now that they were free from the emotional strain of the court case, they were able to focus on rebuilding their relationship even more. They laughed together, spent time doing things they both enjoyed, and slowly but surely, they began to feel like a family again. One evening, after a busy day, John and Emily sat on the porch of their house, enjoying the calm of the evening. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden light over the garden, and they both felt at peace for the first time in a long while. "I still can't believe it," Emily said, looking up at her dad. "It feels like a dream. I never thought I would be able to live with you like this." John smiled and put his arm around her. "I know, kiddo. It's been a long road, but we made it, and I'm never going to let you go again. I'm here for you always." Emily leaned against her dad, feeling safe and loved. She had always known that he cared about her, but after everything that had happened, she now knew without a doubt that he would always fight for her. She was no longer afraid of what her mom might say or do. She had learned that she had the power to speak her truth, and she had the courage to stand up for herself and her relationship with her dad. As the days went on, Emily started to feel more comfortable with her new routine. She visited her mom for supervised visits, but she was no longer scared or uncertain. The relationship with her mom had changed, and Emily knew that her mom needed time to come to terms with the court's decision. For now, Emily was focused on making her life with John the best it could be. One afternoon, they took a trip to the park together. It was a sunny day, and they spent hours walking, talking, and laughing. Emily felt like she was finally getting the childhood she had always dreamed of. A childhood where both parents cared for her, but with the peace of mind that she was no longer stuck in the middle. Emily had become a more confident young girl since the trial. She had learned that her voice mattered, that she had the right to be heard, and that she didn't have to keep her feelings hidden for fear of upsetting anyone. She knew that she could trust her dad to always have her back, no matter what. As the years went by, Emily grew into a strong, independent young woman, always remembering the lessons she had learned through the difficult years of her parents' divorce. She knew that her bond with her dad was unbreakable, and that no matter what happened in the future, they would always be there for each other. John watched Emily as she grew up, proud of the young woman she had become. He knew that their relationship, built on love and trust, would continue to thrive for many years to come. Together, John and Emily looked toward the future with hope, knowing that they had fought for their happiness and had come out stronger on the other side.